Okay, so good morning. My name is Colleen Kennedy, and I'm the Executive Director for Grossmore Cooperating Association and a partner of GMIST. I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time this morning to do this webinar in partnership with the Ontario Festivals and Events. Festivals and events has become important to the region I live in, Grossmore, and as a season extension, an economic driver in our region, and really about, building stuff for community also. So looking very forward to this event webinar myself. And I'd like to start with introducing Debbie Mann from Festival and Events Ontario. So I'm going to pass it over to Debbie because she's got way better information than I do. So welcome, Debbie.
Thanks so much, Colleen. Welcome, everyone. So glad to be here and to host this event for you. My name is Debbie Mann. I'm with Festivals and Events Ontario. I have been here for rolling into 19 years, and I just love this community. I mean, it's just such grassroots and creative people who run events, and you're small business owners, even though you don't know it. And you have to do every aspect of work. So we're excited to be here and helping you. I'm going to introduce you to Trevor and Doug from Bay of Quinte. I met Trevor and Doug actually a few months ago in Kingston at the Impact event, although we didn't know who each other were at the time. And they had such great energy and great information that when Nora asked me to do this, I reached out to them. So I'm going to pass it over to you guys, and let's have some fun. Oh, before you do that, you can ask questions at the end. You can either unmute, raise your hand through the reactions button, or put the questions in the chat, and we'll get to them and answer all your questions. All right, over to you.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Debbie, and welcome, everybody. We're coming to you from Belleville on the Bay of Quinte, and we're really happy to be here. Thanks so much to FEO. Thanks to GMIST for hosting. I'm Doug. This is Trevor, and I'll just take you through a quick little agenda for the day. We're going to do some quick intros so you know who we are, and talk to you about our organization, the Bay of Quinte Regional Marketing Board. And then we're going to get into the meat of it. We're going to do a couple case studies and talk about creating stakeholder event teams, which is something we do a lot of. Some grant programs we've created out of need for this community, Trev's role in sports and events, and then some downtown specific programs, because we were so lucky to work with 4 downtown communities here, and they're really the lifeblood of this region. And then to Debbie's point, we'll wrap it up, and we can do some Q&A. So if you got questions, throw them into the chat, or we can do those afterward. So my name's Doug Stevenson, and I'm from Sussex, New Brunswick. I got a shout out. I see John McNair on here. I went to high school with John and his brother. And he owns a cool store called Outdoor Elements in Sussex. So when you're rolling through Sussex, you got to see that. But I love being able to see everybody come on. I saw Miramichi, used to play baseball there. I saw Crab Mountain. I used to ski race there. Shediac, hit the beach. Moncton, I spent so much time there. So I'm from New Brunswick, but live here now. My role is executive director of this organization. And so I get to do all the sexy stuff, budget, planning. And then my background is, kind of interesting. I was never involved in tourism before, and came to this role actually from the healthcare sector and also working in television. And fun fact, Trev and I in university both studied psychology. So we kind of ended up in our roles in very strange and different ways.
Hi, folks. I'm Trevor Norris. I'm the Destination Development Manager here. And I guess as a small organization, what does destination development mean? Well, it means you're a jack of all trades. I have quite a few portfolios I take care of. One is experiential development or product development, and actually started that journey out in good old Rocky Harbor, Newfoundland, with our friends GMIST. And since then, kind of run that portfolio, help build and craft sustainable regenerative experiences here in the region. One of my other roles is sports tourism. So managing our tourism assets here, talking to our community partners, figuring out what kind of sports tournaments that we want in the region, then going out and trying to get those, as well as travel trade. So, I'll work with travel agents from all over Canada, but mostly our feeder regions, Quebec and New York and New York State, and try and get them up here to the region.
And then we've got 3 others on our team, one that's in charge of the brand and all the branding elements, one that's in charge of content and social media, and then someone new who's just started, and their role is actually just to support everything. So the little asterisk for other duties is required. That's everything that they do. So just quickly, we'll talk to you about the Bay of Quinte region. So we're, a couple hours east of Toronto, kind of in between Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, if you drew a triangle. So it's a pretty terrific place to be, very rich in outdoors. We're on the water. All of our communities are on the water. And, we're basically 3.5 hours from about 10 million people. So it's been a really interesting place to work because we've seen a lot of growth in terms of visitation and tourism and really events. And events as a mechanism to drive visitation. And that's really, again, where our role has been. So we are a destination marketing and management organization. I saw a few of those on this call, which is awesome. But for folks who don't know, our job is just to market the area to get people here. And ours might be a bit more unique where we're not just specific to tourism. We also work in resident attractions. So as much as we try and get tourists to visit the region, we're also trying to get new residents to be here as well. And so the reason I mentioned that we're a destination marketing and management organization is it kind of sets the frame for what we're going to take you through over the next half hour or so in our role. We're very careful to point out we don't organize events. We don't run events because we know how much work it is, and our work is needed on the marketing side. So what we do and what you'll see us take you through is how we play a support role, a capacity building role, and a coordination role. So we got this really terrific regional partnership up on the North Shore. If you pull it up on Google Maps or Bing, and over on the west side with Brighton, then Quinte West, Belleville, which is where our office is, and then Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte, and Napanee over on the east side. And then I mentioned that resident attraction piece. So the bottom organization there, the Quinte Home Builders Association. And all of these organizations feed into our budget, run our governance model, and are on our board of directors, and ultimately are who tell us what they want us to do for them. And so, through the course of the year, our job again is marketing. And so we're working across, any given year, 25 to 30 tactics, all the stuff you see on a regular basis that you're doing too, probably your socials, your web, programmatic, paid search, but also some of that more nuanced stuff that not necessarily every destination does, like Trev was talking about, developing tourism experiences and products, working with trade operators, integrating into sports and events tourism. So that kind of brings us back into the meat of what we're going to talk about today, which is what Debbie asked us to do, making small town and rural events more competitive. And so again, kind of as a precursor, what I would say is this region didn't have a whole lot going on for it, let's say a decade ago. And we're really fortunate because it's kind of grown substantially over that decade. And we like to think we played a part in that. But also it's because people took it upon themselves to create product, create things like events. And we have a very busy events calendar, from the little tiny stuff to the big stuff that's attracting thousands or even tens of thousands. Notably next year, we have the Quinte International Air Show, which is happening at CFB Trenton, Canada's largest Air Force base. Trevor's got a national soccer event happening. So we do see some of these massive things, but typically we're in that sweet spot of, hundreds to thousands, and those are excellent for our communities whose populations range from, 15,000 to 55,000. So one of the things that we recognized as a destination marketing organization working with multiple communities and hundreds of stakeholders are that so many of these event organizations have constraints, and they're the same constraints. Probably you know all of them. And often events are being run here by not-for-profit organizations or volunteers in the community. So budget is a huge constraint. The same is human resources, because most of these folks aren't being paid to run the events. Time is a constraint. They often are starting from scratch, so nobody knows about them. Nobody's following them digitally. And therefore, also, they don't typically have a lot of partnerships or connections, whereas that is really our bread and butter. Trev often jokes that we are like a dating service, right? Where we're connecting people with the services that they might need throughout the region. And then the other piece is marketing know-how. It's our job to be really good at marketing. It's not necessarily an event organizer's job to do that, or a not-for-profit's job, or a volunteer's job. So these are common event organization constraints we notice. It turns out the advantages of an organization like ours are the exact same. And so this is really where we come in terms of supporting events. So the budget, the human resources, the time, our digital following, the partnerships and connections that we have, our knowledge of marketing, are all these assets that we've been so happy to integrate into a lot of events in this region. I want to just quickly, before I go to the next slide, talk about budget. We're really fortunate. We have this thing called the municipal accommodation tax, which I'm sure a lot of communities in the East Coast and throughout Canada have. And it's this idea of a hotel tax or an accommodation tax. When you stay somewhere, you pay X%. Here, it's in 2 of our communities. It's about 4%, but we're able to derive really $500,000 to $600,000 from that, which we never had before up until 2020. And so that is another really huge element that's enabled us to play this role, because all of a sudden we have money available to do some of the things we're going to talk to you about. So I realize that, you know, not everybody has that. And we've treated it really as a luxury that we try to share with the community. So the different event roles that we play, we'll just take you down through some of them. A huge one's branding. Again, we've got somebody in-house. Her expertise is branding. Most people don't have that. New events need a brand. So often a role that we're playing is literally she will sit down with event organizations, you know, for a couple of hours, figure out what they want to do and develop a brand for them so that they can succeed with that.
Yeah, and the next I would say would be logistics. So we have a unique perspective when it comes to seeing an event through a different lens. We see it from a macro lens. So, you know, depending on what time of year it is, we can, you know, come into the situation and talk with the organizers about some of the resources they might need, they didn't know they need, and, you know, kind of fill in some gaps and kind of work through some of those logistics, either that we can complement or fill in some gaps where they may not have thought of some of those logistical things that will, you know, make that event successful.
And then content creation. So similarly, we got a full-time staffer here. That's her entire job. Writing, creating visuals, creating social posts or content posts. And so often what we'll do is bring an event organizing team in and say, excuse me, what messages do you need to get out there? And we'll help them create a content calendar and even write some of those things.
Yeah, and then I think, you know, leading off the logistics thing, coordination is such a big part of it as well, you know, and that, you know, having that macro view of the community, we know what businesses might be able to, we might be able to put them in touch with, either locally or further out, to accent, you know, the success of that business, whether it be, you know, food vendors or, you know, transportation needs, and, you know, look at that hotels, accommodations, if they need it. And as you'll see in my sports role, you know, I work a lot in that sort of world to support that in the coordination role that I have.
So ultimately, we're often playing this role like the dating role, where we're connectors and bringing people in, asking them, tell us everything you're trying to accomplish, and then literally just, have you talked to this person? We should put you in touch with this organization. This guy's got a bus. All these sorts of things where we're connecting individuals just to try to save them the time of having to do that themselves.
Yeah, and support programs also are a huge part of this. A lot of time, event organizers don't, their heads in the sand, they're in a bit of a lane. They're not looking for, they see funding that they have either through sponsorship or they've got money to run the event. So we're actually here to expand their world a little bit and look at where can we get other funding from? Is it from the province? Is it federal funding? Is there local funding that's available even through us that could help them from that side of things?
And then similar to what I was talking about with content creation, one of the roles we also play is coordinating third-party content. So what do I mean by that? Literally reaching out to different content organizations or news outlets or advertising outlets and coordinating that with the event organizer. So often what we'll do is, as part of the content schedule that we've created, we'll build out, hey, we got to be in this print piece over in this community that's going to drive people in, or we got to be on this digital property, or we got to get this influencer or this travel writer coming in and talking about what you're going to do. And sometimes we'll pay for that. Sometimes we'll coordinate it. Sometimes we'll actually write it and just give it to the third party, but we'll play that role as well.
And then, we're marketers, so we need to help with advertising. So that's one of a big thing that, when we're helping events or helping people run these sort of things, and we work through a marketing plan with them, advertising is a big part of it. And not just advertising through normal channels. We can give them a suite of things that is tailored specifically to that event. It could be more heavily on social media. It could be more heavily on radio, print. It could be a bunch of things. And we're in a great position to be able to have, some history and some expertise knowing what works well in our region and how to get to the demographic or the markets they want to through their advertising efforts.
Yeah. And then we're also a community builder. So I think that's kind of an overarching theme. But ultimately, what we're trying to do with these events is create things that are going to be long lasting and that are going to grow. So often the other piece that we'll do with events, because of our knowledge of all these other things happening within the 5 communities in our region, is we'll offer up ideas like, hey, have you thought about going in this direction or expanding like this? Ultimately in an effort to drive community development.
And the final thing that's an important key to this is financial support. So as the DMO and, a proportion of our MAT money, we actually set aside to provide seed money for events to get off the ground and hopefully succeed and be sustainable. So actual sponsorship is a role that we play and are happy to play.
But we don't organize events.
Correct.
Yeah. But I think the overarching theme here is, if you're not doing this or if you haven't done it a whole lot, is hopefully you can find either a DMO or an organization like ours to leverage for these sorts of things. So I just want to take you through a couple of case studies through the rest. So one of them is creating these partner driven event teams. And this is something that we started doing maybe just before COVID. Because what we found was, again, the municipal staff from the communities that we work with are often, taxed with all the stuff they've got to do on a regular basis. Then they're given this added, responsibility of organizing a community event, which, as we all know on this call, is a crazy amount of work. And so what we started doing was creating what we call scrum teams. And so I'm going to use an event that launched 2 years ago, the Belleville Jazz Festival. What we do is we try and create a scrum team out of all of the organizations that need to be a part of something. So the DMO, somebody from that municipality or community. We got these great downtowns often that have a strong BIA, so we get a BIA rep there. The Chamber of Commerce in each of our communities often has a role to play. We get a chamber rep. And then we often get other community stakeholders. So for example, in this case, we have a terrific arts council called the Quinte Arts Council, which is overarching for arts within all of our communities. We got them involved. And so literally what we do is we sit down so that the community staff doesn't have to take all the burden in that kind of initial coordination piece. So not the actual, running of the event. We sit down and we go, what can you do? What can you do? What can you do? And we divide and conquer. And we have found that this is a model that works so well. It really started in Belleville, which is the largest community within our partnership. And we've taken that model and we've inserted it with each of our communities. And we found that it's working really well in those as well. One of the things that we did with the Jazz Fest and that Trev touched on is we provide a pretty significant sponsorship for them. It's not massive. We gave them $5,000 to start. The reason we're doing this with these new events, and we don't do this with everybody, but we kind of decide which are the events that make sense based on where our communities are going, is to provide them with seed funding. As you know, most events, you can't get funding. It's a strange catch-22 where you need to be established to get funding, but you can't get established without the funding. So we found that this was a void that we were really able to fill. And again, that goes back to this municipal accommodation tax. All of a sudden, we got the cash to do it. So why don't we provide it as an influx to these organizations? And then we also supported it with a larger funding application. So I mentioned the Quinte Arts Council. They made an application to the Ontario Arts Council for sustainability funding for this jazz festival. They got it. And we played a role where we wrote in all the marketing piece, all the demographic and geographic marketing stuff, designed the budget and designed the marketing plan. And this is a super boring looking slide, and I'm not going to take you through it, but I just want to show you how we often work with events to drill down on what are your geographic targets, either primary or sub or both. What are your demographic targets and how are we going to define those and why do these make sense? And then putting them down on paper so that it feeds into a marketing plan. Often we're just building something out in an Excel spreadsheet that we give to them. And it's super simple. And we found this sweet spot of, somewhere upwards of 10,000, where if we can scrape together that much for an event, we can actually get some sizzle and make a bit of a dent in the marketing and attract a pretty significant amount of people. And so as we were talking about in the previous slide, we just came to learn that most of the time, our event organizers in this region don't know how to create a marketing plan or create a marketing budget. And so it's been a great role for us to be able to play because, again, we got a budget just a bit over $1 million. So we're used to putting these sorts of things together, and it's been a nice thing for us to be able to do. Just quickly, I'll take you through another example. Our partners in Quinte West put together what they called the Big Summer Concert last year. They got this terrific park right on the water. Centennial Park has got this natural amphitheater, and they don't use it as much as they'd like to. So they took it upon themselves. They said, let's do it. We're going to create this event to use this thing because it's beautiful. And then they ran into the same thing of, oh, right, and now this is a ton of work. So they reached out to us and said, how can you help us? We said, why don't we take care of the entire content plan? So we hired videographers, we hired photographers, we put some slick stuff together, we did some editorial, we did a ton of work through our owned marketing channels. So again, we got a good following, 50, 60K when you put all our digital channels together. And so that's great in this region of 200,000 people to be able to get out and market to them. So we did a bunch through our channels, but then we also got some third party media placements, through significant publications, coordinated that, wrote those, and got those paid for as well. And it was a great event.
So I'm going to talk a bit about our marketing grants. This is kind of a really unique program. At first, it started out, it really started as a COVID recovery sort of support. And since we've actually continued it, and what it sort of does is sort of give businesses the opportunity to apply for, marketing specific activities. And a lot of those times they don't have the budget they didn't have the budget to do that sort of stuff. So we were able to provide some funds to offset that. So, you can apply for anything for getting a website built. We did some print collateral stuff, radio advertising, things like that. So, once again, it's our map money at work. We're taking our tourism dollars and driving it right back into the community and filling gaps. Signage is wayfinding is part of the grant program. Things like that, where we were able to look at some businesses who maybe were like, oh, they could use a new, a little refresh on their website. They applied, got the marketing grant, and we were able to help them with that. And we were able to slowly move the bar of people's marketing know-how and prowess up in quality and fill those gaps. And we've awarded over $50,000 to over 80 organizations in the last 3 years. That's a lot of money to a lot of small businesses in a small rural region like us. And the nice thing about our applications is, we're not the final judge. We actually bring in all our partner communities, and we have one person from each community sit on a judging panel, and they're reviewed by that team as a region, and we pick the best application as a group. So it's very, equitable, and it works out great that way.
And as part of the grant, one of the things we do is we keep this Scrum team mentality, where if an organization gets a grant, they're actually required to meet with us plus a rep from their community to review the idea, review the plan, and then we try our best, again, going back to that slide where we have these various roles, we try our best to support them, build capacity for them to succeed with the money. And it's been pretty terrific. So just want to take you through a couple of examples from an event point of view. The first one is a pretty terrific fishing event that's been going on. Actually, I think it's just in its third decade now. It's called Kiwanis Walleye World. It's one of the biggest walleye fishing tournaments actually in North America. So it typically attracts somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 anglers into this region. But it's a not-for-profit. I mean, it's run by the Kiwanis. They're trying to give back to the community. They don't have money to be putting into this thing. So they applied because they had significant website needs. One of the things that they try and do is this real-time weigh-in web page, and so they had to have some significant functionality built into their site so that at any given time, if somebody's on there, they could see how they're stacking up relative to the competition. And so that was a great example of they didn't necessarily need any support running their event, but they did need support on that funding side and to talk out some of the other nuances of their website. So we were able to play that role. So that's kind of a huge event in the region. Another one is recurring events. So we're super fortunate. We got this independently owned theater called the Empire Theater. It's in downtown Belleville. And so this is a 700-seat theater. It's bringing in, great Canadian acts. So, shout out to Joel Plaskett on the East Coast. Yeah. You'd see your Blue Rodeo. You'd have Matthew Good through there. Sloan. I've seen Sloan there a couple of times. Speaking of East Coast bands. So they get some pretty good talent through there. But again, it's still an independently owned theater with not a huge budget. So their application really was on that marketing side. What can we do to drive, especially digital marketing, in order to attract more people into this theater on an ongoing basis, which is sometimes difficult, right? If you don't have as sexy an act, or if it's the middle of November and it's sleeting outside, like it is today, people don't want to leave the house. So there was an example of where we provided not only some grant dollars, but also some of that marketing know-how support on what they could do for digital marketing promotion month over month. And then a smaller event, this is actually artwork from one that just happened, but it started a few years ago. It was pretty cool. This group of maybe 20 or so retail businesses in downtown Trenton and Quinte West banded together. They've got a couple of real strong leaders in that downtown who said, we should all get together and do some sales, with 20 plus at some points throughout the year. So I think they do 2 a year. But they said same thing, like, we need some help with the marketing. So in the beginning, we started to develop a radio program, a digital program. They actually started using an app that was pretty big around here for a little while called Get in the Loop. I don't know if that exists out in the East Coast. It's not really here anymore. But they did a terrific job with that. And so again, it was really working with them and sitting down and figuring out, how do we market this whole thing? But then how do we also work with more of the individuals to ensure that they're communicating with crowds that resonate too?
So I kind of want to touch a little bit on sporting events because they happen sometimes under our noses, and we don't have anything to do with them, but we do help with marketing. But in a lot of cases, in a smaller rural region like this, like us, we don't attract a lot of big sporting events. They look to the larger cities for this sort of thing. So we have to play an active role to go and try and attract sporting events of significance to our region. And so it's an interesting role that I've been learning over the last 7 years of how to how our role as the organization works and how my personal role works without me being on site and running the sporting event, which can be tricky because, as you know, you can easily be, next thing you know, you got a walkie-talkie and you're there for 7 days and you're running around running. You got the vest on. So we try not to play that role. What our role and what my role sort of encompasses is assessing and managing our regional sports tourism interests and needs. And by that, we have 4 municipalities and a First Nations that are partners with us. So I actually have to know and go around and site visit all our sporting sort of assets, everything from arenas to soccer fields to baseball fields, see where they are in conjunction with provincial sort of standards for tournaments like that, or if we're going to bring in have local tournaments, do they fit those requirements? And so I have to have a general knowledge of that, but also looking at what events are in the region, what sporting tournaments are in the region. For instance, Napanee, one of our regions, they've got a heck of a lot of great baseball fields. They're just starting to kind of access that. And my role is going out and while they're busy trying to run that, go and see what other things can fill those other fields that aren't being used, whether it be or even soccer fields or off season like winter sports, and fill some of the gaps where the communities aren't using those assets, and we can get people into the region because, as you know, sporting events can bring in a heck of a lot of return on your investment. It's hotel nights, it's people are eating at restaurants, it's families, it's so that is a big part of it. So and like I said, I'm assisting in maximizing those sporting assets within each community and trying to build capacity. In a lot of cases, like the soccer tournament I'm going to be talking about right now, is that we landed a national sporting event, soccer, and that in itself has created a mechanism for the community to invest more in upgrading some of their assets. Redoing some of the fields, the turf on their fields. Bringing in some better lighting, which is gonna make the community stronger and that sport in our community stronger. So a sporting event can be a catalyst for really great change, a force for good, as I might say. So the soccer tournament that we actually started very early in the process. One of my roles is to actually go to the National Sporting Tourism Congress, so the Sports and Events Congress, which is held all over Canada. And I sit down and I speed date with a bunch of provincial and national tournament organizers, sporting organizations from Soccer Canada, Hockey Canada, all these. So we realized in Quinte West, they have these amazing 5 fields down by the water, and it's called Centennial Park. And we thought we could build on that and attract soccer to the region from a higher level. So we went and talked to Soccer Canada. I sort of met with them. They had interest. I sold the region. They came down for a site visit. So part of my role is organizing a FAMs, or familiarization tours, where I'll host sporting organizations, show them around, show them hotels, show them the restaurants, show the fields, introduce them to the community's Fields people and the city, my city partners, and build that relationship. So for Soccer Canada and the national championships coming next fall in 2024, we're hosting 24 teams from around from all over Canada. It's going to be over 300 rooms, might even close to 400 rooms across 6 hotels. It's 7 nights, 8 days. So that's a huge influx of people to our region who have never been here on a domestic level, which is really amazing for a small region. I help with things like, my role is a bit of a bookend. I come in the beginning. I'm the training wheels. Put me on the bike. Okay, get them rolling. When the bike's rolling, my training wheels come off and I sort of step to the side, and then I come in with marketing plan, marketing support, and we work on the advertising side of it on the back end of it. So, starting the beginning, we start with transportation, things like sponsorship. Since we have a macro view of the region, we can see what businesses would be a good fit to sponsor an event like this and go and take meetings with those people. We have a lot of smaller rural regions like this, the communities we work with, they don't have a lot of in-house staff to do a lot of things that we do on a marketing level. And that's branding, design. We have in-house design. Jenna, our brand manager who does all our discovery, she helps with things like logo support, doing things like building signage, design templates for social media. And then marketing. Doug and I that's when Doug will fly in, help with a marketing plan for the event. And then, of course, like content, we're kind of responsible for helping build content. We're story-driven organization, so we try and find the story in everything we're doing. And so next year, it happens to be the centennial or the 100th anniversary of the Trenton Air Force Base, and so we're kind of building some of the military history in with the soccer tournament and that community, and finding the champions, the people who've been coaches for 30 years, and putting them on camera or in little social media posts, and that sort of thing. And I say, the goal of this is to help create, a sport tourism legacy, right? That our local sporting organizations like Quinte West Soccer can build upon. Those kids are going to see other under 15-year-old kids playing soccer at a level they've never seen before in their backyard, and they have something to aspire to. And it strengthens our ability as a region to collaborate, to share best practices. We can't stress that enough. If we can get away from the idea of competition and get in the idea that collaboration will make us stronger, that is really key when event organizing, but also when it comes to shared practices. It's okay for other events to take the best out of other events and mirror that and share those best practices, and creating revenue that wasn't there before. If we can get a tournament that comes back year after year, those hotels can rely on that income. Restaurants are going to know that, we're going to be full in February for those 2 weeks. That's really going to help us in maybe the off season, etc.
And then we'll just take you through one more here before we wrap up. Just another case study on a downtown support program that we created. So again, that municipal accommodation tax, it's been a bit magical for us. I mentioned we have 5 community partners. We receive a municipal accommodation tax from 2 of them, so Belleville and Quinte West. And so again, what we did was we said, well, we're pretty fortunate to get this cash. The downtowns in these communities are really arguably the biggest product for each of these communities. But again, they don't have much of a budget, and they don't necessarily have the staff who have either the knowledge or the capacity to do much from a marketing point of view. So what we do is we portion off 10% of that municipal accommodation tax that we receive. So it's probably 50 or 60K through a year. And we work with those downtowns to create programs. So specifically with Belleville and downtown Trenton, which is in Quinte West, to create programs. And the goal is creating new programs so that they wouldn't otherwise be able to do without these monies, or enhancing something they're already doing that they wouldn't be able to do without that influx of budget. And often what happens is it's driven by events. So really it's meant to be a product driver. Again, these downtowns, if people are visiting them, then typically they're getting around the rest of the region as well. Event-specific funding often ends up being a large portion of it. And so, some of the things we've been able to do is infrastructure. So, just these two up benches up here in the top right, and there's some patios that have been created as well, that have been arted up by local artists. These are things that they wouldn't have necessarily been able to do without these funds coming in. I mean, are these a huge deal? No, but it's something for somebody to come and, sit in the downtown, take some time, or if they're on a patio at one of these local restaurants on the downtown strip, feel like the downtown's a bit more alive. Another big one has been art installations. And so in the lower left there, you can see one of them that Downtown Belleville did last year, I believe. And again, it's been a driver for people to go downtown, but these things are expensive. So they're not necessarily an event, but they kind of become an event in that they're a recurring thing for people to do from a product point of view. And also because these downtowns are frequently doing events through the year, especially in those summer months when the art installations are often there, it's almost like an add-on to the event or something that is an additional attractor. Another thing is performers. So like this guy in the bottom right there, I mean, he's on a unicycle juggling fire. Come on, who doesn't want to see that? And so, when we're able to take some of this budget and support events being enhanced by having more interesting performers there, that's an awesome role for us to play because it means we're driving people to these downtowns, ultimately giving them a good time so that hopefully they're going to want to come back or stay for longer. And then I mentioned the marketing and the content piece, which is, again, something that throughout the entire year, but specifically for events as well, we'll sit down with these downtown associations and work through, help them create a budget, help them create a plan, help them grow or enhance or create new opportunities that they wouldn't otherwise be able to do, especially from an events point of view. So what did we learn today? Specifically leveraging your community. I find, there's probably not a week that goes by where that's not a primary role that we're playing. Every DMO operates differently for sure, and I get that. And not every DMO, again, has budget opportunities like a municipal accommodation tax. But this has become a role that we've really started to play, especially from pre-COVID and through COVID and continuing on now, is leveraging community partners like DMOs, but also all those who might have a stake in the event. Get them in the room, give them something to do. And often people have been all too happy to participate in that process. Creating support mechanisms where we see a need. So again, like Trevor detailed, we created those marketing grants because there was a need. But it turns out that need continues because all small businesses and all event organizations need money. And if our mandate is marketing, then why shouldn't we be supporting them from a marketing financial point of view? And then again, leaning on DMOs and other organizations like us for event planning.
And I think Doug and I both didn't come from tourism, so we didn't know any better. So, in a lot of cases, organizations will sort of be in a bubble and no one sort of reaches out or wants to talk to anyone or thinks they maybe, can't talk to someone. And I think that's one of the big things we've done is we've gone and just, been very vocal and active about here's how we can help you. Like, don't feel free to come and meet with us. And, we'll never turn down a meeting. We'll always have people in to brainstorm. And it's, as Doug touched on, the more we're getting people involved, the better. It's like, we're so yeah.
And maybe just one more thing that I guess we didn't mention in the presentation is it's always been a real advantage for us because we have 5 regional community partners. So we can never kind of look at things like this. We've always got to consider, well, how are we going to get them involved and who's going to be involved from here? And what we often find is when we're dealing with a community partner, and this is no offense, but they're looking at it like this because that's their goal. Their goal is just to achieve what they need to achieve for either their organization or their community. And so we've often been able to say, well, hey, next door, 5 minutes away, is this other community of 40,000. Why don't we see who else can get involved?
Yeah.
And so I think just opening people's minds up to working on a more of a partnership level when that's, when that's possible.
For sure.
Anyway, we want to say thank you. Here's the rest of the team here, Jen and Anna and Patrick, Jen's dog. And our new employee actually hasn't started yet. They start in a couple weeks. And there's our emails in case you want to reach out to us. And we'd be happy to take any questions. And it looks like exactly 9:45 or 10:45. We have nailed this, I think.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That was delivered with such enthusiasm and energy. So, and great content. So does anybody out there in the Zoom land have any questions for Doug or Trevor? Yeah, Francois,
Lean in here.
you're muted.
I know.
There
Okay.
you go.
Just for Colleen and the ones from Grossmore, not that I'm interested in this, but I'm interested in when they brought in the municipal accommodation tax, did it impact occupancy at all? Did your level of
Not at all.
tourism be impacted at
No.
all?
No, if anything,
Tourists
it's
are
actually
happy to
grown.
pay for 2%.
Yeah, I'm just putting together a presentation so I can actually tell you that since it was implemented, overnight accommodation percentage from CBRE, the National Data Program, it's actually grown 9% since implementation. In Ontario, almost every community has implemented. And so 4% is so negligible. And what I would say as well is, depending on how you stack up, average price here is still a little under 200 a night. Just 2 hours down the road, it's 500 a night in Toronto. So maybe that 4% means something there, but it doesn't here. Good question.
And I would say that there's a lot of false information about the fear around municipal accommodation tax. It's existed in one way or another in a lot of ways for many, many years, especially internationally. So I think the fear that it's going to impact people's travel decisions, that's a bit of a I want to say fake news, but
Yeah.
it is, and it's amazing to see the growth that's happened because of it.
Right.
And really, it's a non-issue. And as you can see, it's created such an amazing resource for us to grow as a destination, but to funnel that money right back into the community.
Yeah.
In all sorts of ways, especially with events.
You can't even buy a pen in Niagara without paying tax. Municipal accommodation.
I'd like to respond to Francois. We do have accommodation tax here in Grossmore. It's a voluntary one. It's not a municipal one. So we have a partnership with 8 accommodators that collect a levy in the tune of about 150,000 a year, and that goes directly back into destination marketing. And it is one that we use sometimes to do a little bit of seed funding for special events and that, Francois.
A good question, Francois. Yeah.
I
Yeah,
saw
so-
a question come up about the grants, whether it made a difference if you were not for profit versus for profit. We haven't done that. And again, in this region, the employment data and organizational data shows that pretty much over 80% of all the organizations here are small businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And so even though they're for profit, they're hustling 7 days a week. They got their, 11-year-old daughter slinging burgers in order to make a buck. And so we have always said that money's money, and it doesn't matter if you're for profit or not for profit.
No.
Francois, did you have another question?
I was just going to make a comment. Last week, traveling through Quebec in a campground, I was charged municipal accommodation tax and the provincial accommodation tax and all that. I just paid them. I'm like, where does it end? But I mean, we'll have to talk, Colleen, because our business, we don't charge that tax. So I know I've benefited from it with the storytelling festival. So maybe
next
we should
time,
charge.
Francois, you just have to drive through Quebec and come right to the Bay of Quinte, man. You won't pay at a campground here.
Yeah, I was just happy to find a campground open year round.
True.
There's a couple of are there similar organizations that provide marketing help in New Brunswick? This is our biggest struggling on exporting our musicals and bringing in people for our festival, or musicians, actually. That was Laura Beth who asked that.
in New Brunswick? I would know.
I saw someone from Tourism NB on this
Yeah.
call.
Yeah, that's me, Allison Ayton. Hi.
Put you on the spot, Allison.
I know the pressure. So I actually represent the whole province. So we provide funding to festivals, but not specifically around marketing help. If you do collect visitor information of the people who attend your festivals, we can provide you information on who is coming. So using that, we can give you some really good insight around, what kind of media they consume, what social media they like to use, like all that kind of marketing information so that you're not wasting your money, your very limited resources. It also helps you with programming in terms of knowing if what you're programming is what they want, or if you're bringing in people that you think you're bringing in one kind of person, but you're actually bringing in a different one. We can look at who you want to bring in and provide you some insight as to what kind of programming would attract those other people. But I know, for example, you're with the Summer Music Festival, right, Laura Beth?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you talk to Fredericton Tourism, which is your local DMO, they actually provide funding directly to festivals in the area. And again, much like the gentlemen today have been saying, the hotels here collect a levy, and they do actually give it back to not City of Fredericton, but Fredericton Tourism or Fredericton Capital Region Tourism, and they provide funding that way out to the festivals in the region.
Yeah, we
And
get a
I
lot of
would-
our operational funding through them. It's more marketing specific because we're in this like weird half section where we're both not-for-profit and performance, that we fall out of the criteria for marketing specific funding. So we kind of get kneecapped there, and where it's such like, I am the only employee. I really need marketing money, and it's very hard to convince our supporters to be like, oh yes, marketing, when we use our money pretty much to only pay our musicians at this point. So I was hoping there was like one that I could be like,
and
oh,
maybe
there's a
that's
marketing
something you need to actually talk to them about, and say, I know that they have festival funding as well, but not marketing specific. So maybe that's what the conversation needs to be like, and maybe you need to kind of gather some other festivals in the area to support you as well, because I'm sure they would. And say, hey, Fredericton, would you be willing to create a funding area specifically for marketing for festivals?
Yeah, and I would encourage you
Thank you.
to actually challenge your DMOs and approach them about something like this. Use us as the example and say, maybe they haven't thought about that type of program before, or it hasn't existed. So an open line of communication and honest communication about your needs, with even using us as an example of how we roll it out. And we're happy to sort of detail that to any other DMO, because we see that shared practices makes other organizations across Canada stronger, and we're stronger as a tourism region, or as a tourism industry, if that sort of happens. So yeah, it doesn't hurt to ask, and there are palpable examples on the table, like with our program, that other people have mirrored or are using, and we've certainly not invented the wheel on this. We've seen this other
But
places.
one thing where we're able to be more flexible, because we're not tied to a municipality, right? We're this partnership. So we're kind of an arm's length entity. So we can be a bit more flexible with our funding policies. So for example, we'll often be the booze sponsor because we work with local wineries and local craft breweries, whereas municipalities often can't play that role. Or to your point, we're able to do things like fund artist fees, where sometimes there are policies within municipalities that preclude them from being able to offer those sorts of supports. So keeping those sorts of things in mind as well, because maybe if you can't do it through the municipality, you could create some sort of third party that can be a portfolio of cash.
Thanks, guys. There's another question here. Are any of the organizations using AI to get targeted insights from the data to help smaller operators?
We are actually AI generated.
Yeah,
today.
we're not even really here. We aren't. But I will say this is something, in my opinion, for any destinations with some cash to consider. there is a really terrific data program that we're just getting onto. It's out of the US. It's called Zartico, Zartico. Yes, I said Z. And it's really worth checking out. It's maybe some of you would be familiar with Environics. It's kind of like Environics on steroids, in my opinion, because it provides real-time data within 48 hours, movement of people in and out of zones that you can geofence. They're going to have spending data from the major credit card providers in Canada, which, to my knowledge, we don't have on a real-time basis right now. And so it'll just kick the pants off of anything you've ever seen from Stats Canada or anything. But it's expensive. It's, you know, it's $40K to get on board.
Wow. Okay. So we have 4 minutes. Are there any other questions? No? Okay. Colleen, did you want to? Oh, sometimes small towns feel isolated. How can anyone like that network together to brainstorm? I would love to keep in touch with interested people in this group. Timothy Warner. So, if everybody's okay, I can share your contact information to all of you. Yes? Okay. I will send, I'll send a note out to all of you with a list of people who registered and attended. So any other questions?
May I ask a question?
Sure, please.
So all of this has been amazing. We're a small business and we're in the middle of nowhere. And so as a rural business, you have to create events in order for anyone to come see you because it's just not, the traffic's just not there. And so all of the things that you kind of touched on were super helpful. We have events, and I don't know if anyone else struggles with this, but I think transportation can sometimes be a hindrance. So you can create a really great event, and that can be the hurdle that keeps people away. So I don't know if anyone else has any insights into that. We have never arranged for a bus before, but I think it would drive our numbers up for our events in order to get more people to them. So I don't know if anyone else has an answer to that, but just curious.
I'd like to respond as to why don't you try a green event and just seeking somebody to support you on trying a bus and lowering that carbon footprint. So, you know, rather than going through the traditional funds off the, the events and festivals fund, look at that green fund and see how that can help you and bring in your event like carbon neutral or something the best you can.
Could you partner with Fredericton, Angela, where I'm guessing they have buses? Like, could you partner with them in order to do something? I know that over here, like so Belleville, which is our largest community, has actually a pretty terrific transit bus program. But it used to be only in Belleville until the adjacent community in Quinte West, which is literally like 5 minutes away, started working more in collaboration. And now they've got bus routes that kind of extend out. We have a tiny little hill here called Batawa. And I think they've finally integrated stops for the bus there. Like, it's taken some work, but the municipality's partnership with the private organization of Batawa created this ability for people to hop on the bus. And you know where it was partly driven from? Was international students who moved here to attend Loyalist College who don't have vehicles. But so what happened was the ski hill saw it as a terrific opportunity for growth at the same time that the municipality saw it as an opportunity for growth in their bus program. So it was like a win-win. By the way, awesome. Angela, King's Horn ain't got nothing on me.
Are you going to have to come out and try it again? You haven't been back here, have you?
Yeah, it's been 20 years, but.
Great. Thank you so much for this. This has been amazing. I'm sorry if anyone else has questions, but I made a lot of notes.
Yeah, hey, don't hesitate to reach out. You got our emails.
Please email us.
Yeah,
we're happy to
we'll get back to you within 20 to 28 business days.
Thanks.
And just to let you know, this is being recorded, so you will have access to this information, like to review this if you have any, if you think you missed something. Is that it, Colleen? Do we have anything else?
No, just to thank you and to remind people to fill in that survey. We really appreciate that. And we do have another event coming up. So tell your friends, November 23rd.
And that's on tips and tricks, I guess, on to run your festival. So festival trends is what we're talking about. So
Well, thanks, Debbie. Thanks, Colleen.
Thanks for
Thanks,
having us.
everybody, for being here.
thank
It's good to meet you.
Thank you so much, Doug and
Don't be a
Trevor. This
stranger.
has been amazing, and looking forward to working with you again in the future.
Sounds
For
like a
sure, yeah.
plan.